When we've had a puncture, there's a few easy things you can do to make life easier for yourself. First of all, when you're taking the wheel off, put it in the lowest gear. So it's in the lowest cog at the back here. This will make it much easier when you're putting the wheel back on the bike. So you loosen your quick release or your through axle. Pull back the rear derailleur and release the wheel. A lot of modern rims are tubeless ready, which makes the sidewall a little bit higher than other wheels. So to take your tires off, you need to pop the tire into the center by just pushing it away from the rim on both sides. If you don't do this, you won't be able to get the tire off with the tire lever. You should then have enough slack to be able to put your tire lever in. Sometimes you may need two. This time you're only going to need one. And release the tire from one side and pull out the tube that's been punctured. Now, it's very important to find out what caused your puncture in the first place. If you've hit something really hard, that's what's called a pinch flat, and the tire will go down instantly. If it's a little bit slower, there may be glass or something else trapped in your tire. So you have to be careful of your fingers, but what you do is you keep an eye on the outside of the tire and you rub your fingers on the inside to try and identify where the piece of glass or stone may be. Once you've found it, you just pop it out or use a pliers to take it out. And once you've checked the tire, and then check the rim tape to make sure there's no holes between the nipple holes and your tube, and that it's well covered by the rim tape. Then you can put your tire back on one side. Then you get your new tube. Put in a small bit of pressure to fill the size of the tire, because what we want to try and avoid is getting the tube trapped underneath the tire, because this will cause a blowout. Then you feed the tube into the tire. First of all, when you've done that, you pop the tire onto the rim, and then starting at the valve, you start pulling the tire onto the rim. When we're putting the tire back on, we're not going to use tire levers at all. We're just going to use our hands. So at the back, I have my thumbs against the rim and I'm pulling from this side. At the very last piece, it might get a bit tight, in which case you turn the wheel over and push the tire down to get all the slack at the bottom, and then pop the last piece on. One major mistake people make is that they put the little ring on. They put this on fully before they inflate the tire. And what that can do is trap the tube underneath the tire, and then when you inflate it, it blows out. So it's very important that the tube is inside the tire, not underneath the tire. So you can leave that loose when you're going to pump. Once you're happy that the tire is on correctly, you can pump the tire. We're going to use a track pump today, and in a second I'll show you how to use CO2 pumps if you're out in a longer spin. So for the track pump, we're going to put the Presta connection onto the valve. Make sure the valve is open, pop it onto the top, pull down the lever, and then pump it to the desired PSI or pounds per square inch. When you've pumped it to the correct pressure, then you can tighten up the ring and put on your cap. And then you're done. So now we're going to do it once with a CO2. I'm just going to release the pressure in this one. If you're preventing punctures, you're using a track pump before you go out for a spin to correct it, to check if you have the right pressure in the tires. Then when you're out in your spin, you're going to bring a spare tube and you're going to bring CO2s. These are easier to use than a mini pump, but you're only using them in emergency. You're checking pressure first before you go out, and then if you do get a flat, you're using a CO2 when you're out because you'll get proper pressure in the tires. The small handheld pumps normally bend the valves if you're pumping under pressure, and you don't want to be stuck out on a long ride. So this is the valve, and this is your CO2 canister. We're going to put it in slightly first, and then we're going to put the connection onto the wheel to make sure that we don't let any air escape once it goes on. So now we're going to twist the canister until it's pierced. You have to have these rubber seals on because they get very cold once they're pierced. And then you press the valve down. And that's instantly inflated the tire to the correct pressure. You can then just pop it off and tighten the valve and put your cap on. Okay, so we're putting it back onto the bike now, and we've put it on the lowest gear to make it easier for us to put the wheel back on the bike. This is especially important if you're doing it on the side of the road. So we know that when we put the chain on the bottom cog, it's going to go on a lot easier. So you're going to pull the rider back, put it on the bottom cog, guide it through the disc, and we're back on. Then you're tightening your quick release, or in this case it's a through axle, so it's threading into the other side of the frame. And that's the wheel back on.